Hey folks, it's Tommy Topdecker back in the house once again, and today I'm here to give you a quick review of the CGC grading service that they just launched for Magic cards and Pokemon cards. Now, you might have saw my previous video where I unboxed a shipment from CGC and I gave you my first impressions. Well, I've had some more time to kind of handle these holders and to just get a feel for things. And you know what? Let's dive in and take a closer look here. So if we look at the top label there, you see it says CGC Universal Grade. So for those of you who don't know about comic books, CGC is pretty much the leader in comic grading at this point. So this label here is heavily borrowed from the comic label. So we apply this comic label here. You see this is it's a Hulk 181, first appearance of Wolverine. You see pretty much they copy the same style with the grade on the left, and you got the description at the top, CGC Universal Grade, and yeah, so pretty much that's where they got the style from. And you notice some other things about the comic holder. It's also transparent on the side. I'd say there's definitely more white space, definitely more empty space, let's say, on the card side. So if we look closer, at the card. Like I said, the major difference between these CGC cases and the PSAs is just the transparency. So if we pull out a couple PSA cards, sorry, I don't have any Magic cards here, I only have sports cards, but you see the size is basically almost the same. The CGC cases are ever so slightly thicker, but the overall length width is basically almost identical. In fact, you can even stack them. I think you can stack. Yeah, not so well. They'll stack, not super well. The CGC cards will stack up against the PSAs. Oh yeah, they kind of stack. All right, but the major difference, I'd say, you could almost say these are almost, the design is almost identical. Just the transparency. Look how the CGC holder is basically like glass, shines right through. But the PSA holder is almost opaque. Almost nothing shines through. And I have to say, looking at these two, the CGC case just looks much more modern. That kind of glass look definitely is more modern design. So if you put these two cards, these two cases, in someone's hands, they're definitely going to say, hey, the CGC looks cooler. On the other hand, PSA is kind of, I think they're not necessarily looking for the latest and greatest style. Kind of like a sports cars, kind of old school industry. If you look at the label, even it's like fixed width font, just kind of old school, right? So PSA is going for their look, CGC is going for theirs. I say CGC did pretty well. So if we look at the side of this case, side of the CGC cases, we see this it's kind of triangle here. This triangle coming along, spaced evenly on both sides. And on one side, on the right side, we have this this kind of weld thing here. That must be some kind of a seal. So if you stack several cases together, you see that those kind of seal marks line up, and you have these triangles here. Overall, the cases stack pretty well. Yeah, stacked pretty nicely. And like I said, if you look at the thickness of the case, that's actually an important attribute. Let's take 3 CGC cards. Sorry, rather 3 PSA cards here, and kind of stack them up against the CGC, and the CGC is just ever so slightly higher, probably like 11 CGC cards might be the same height as 10 PSA cards. They're basically the same. Now BGS, as you know, is much larger. BGS is it's like 4 BGS cards is 3 PSA. They're much taller, and that actually makes a big difference. You start to get a bunch of these, and storage becomes a problem. And although BGS cards are ever so slightly cases may be slightly less tall, slightly more wide, much thicker. So overall, that's kind of a small disadvantage of the BGS case. But if you put the CGC case next to the BGS case, I gotta say, I never was a fan of this BGS case. It's kind of the labels off-centered. I'd say definitely, I prefer the look of the CGC case. So overall, I think CGC did a pretty good job. So one thing, let's talk about this label here, because one thing that really bothered me, you don't notice it so much on this 8.5, but let's look at the 7 grade here, the 7 grade Taiga. look at that text near mint and see how it's not quite aligned. You see there's more white space on the right, to the right of mint, than to the left of near. And same thing with the 7. The 7 is left aligned. It seems like they didn't quite center it. Now maybe this is, just getting started, kind of haven't figured out the tight facing yet, but this is kind of something they should fix, I think. It would look much nicer. I know maybe I'm nitpicking here, but that really bothers me, how that 7 is really off-centered. So hopefully, maybe next revision in a couple weeks, maybe they'll get that straightened out. But overall, I gotta say, it's a nice case. Nothing bad to say about it. Again, it's so similar to the PSA case as far as sizing. It's just the transparency. That's the major difference. Yeah, nothing really bad to say about it. I think I kind of like it. Definitely when you look at these, just the transparency makes it look much cooler. I have to say, much more modern, much cooler on the CGC side. Now, again, you have these triangles going all the way around. You have 3 triangles on each side, 3 triangles here, 3 triangles on the bottom too. That's interesting that they have that there. All right, so you got to look there. Now, I told you that originally when I first unboxed these, it kind of caught me off guard, the transparency. But now that I started to think about it more, I thought, hey, this can actually be an advantage. The cool thing about these transparent cases is you can stick anything behind them. It's like you want a pink case background. There you go. You got a pink background. You know what I'm saying? You can see how that looks with your Chaos Orb. Pink Chaos Orb. All right. You want a green Chaos Orb. All right, no problem. You can kind of customize things. Cut this out and tape it to the back. Looks kind of cool. So SGC, they're kind of a startup in the sports car world. They started coming out with black backgrounded cases, and people start to like those. With these CGC cases, you can kind of do your own thing. So overall, I think the case is really solid. I gotta say, I at this point, I think it's definitely more modern than PSA. Has some advantages over BGS too. I'll definitely prefer the case. But let's talk about some other things. So one thing I noted in my first video was that CGC is starting to, seems to me, to grade these near mint or lower cards a bit harsher than BGS. Like this Thai guy, I think would have come back 758 on the BGS scale. Got a 7 here. So that's just something to keep in mind. Since these CGC cards are brand new to the market, it might take people some time to adjust. People might see a 7 and say, "Oh wow, that's a played card," because a 7 BGS is quite played. Maybe not played, but definitely not near mint. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. There might be some market inefficiency in the near term. So if you have kind of a low graded card and you want to sell it right away, well, maybe CGC is not the best choice until people start to realize how the grading scales work. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is basically speed. So I placed a 30 business day order, and CGC came back with my cards basically in 10 business days. So that was pretty awesome. At this point, BGS raised their prices. They're pretty loaded. CGC is super overloaded. Hella delayed. So if you want quick grades, I gotta say CGC is probably a pretty good choice at this point. In the near term, they probably don't have too many folks sending in cards since they're brand new. They got a bunch of people around, probably nothing to do. They'll grade your card. Send it in. They'll grade it for you. Get it back probably ahead of schedule. So that's a good thing. The negative, of course, is that people just aren't used to the CGC stuff yet. You may find people who don't want it yet. It may take some time. So if you have some cards to sell right away, I gotta say, maybe just stick with the tried and true BGS. But if you're willing, if you just want to slap some cards, maybe come back in a year or two, see if you can sell them. Yeah, definitely, it's a good time to check out CGC. So overall, I think CGC did a good job with the service. Definitely recommended. Actually, going to send some more high-end orders in with them. Got a few Power 9 cards. Gonna go see how they come back. Overall, really happy with these. Definitely going to stick with CGC as a customer, as I have for comics. So hope you enjoyed the video, folks. Hope it was informative. I'm out.